We've talked about pretty much every angle of the High Republic. We've talked about all the different books. We've talked about the structure and the way the phases were mapped out and all of that. Let's compare it one final time to the rest of what we've seen with Star Wars and kind of look at maybe the things that this initiative did better than some of those phases and some of the things it did worse, and maybe in future initiatives from Canon, because this is really the first and only true publishing initiative we have seen from Canon. Maybe in other initiatives from Canon, they can learn from stuff from Legends and learn from things from this. So we like to compare it to New Jedi Order a lot just because the amount of books, but really to me, the most comparable is Clone Wars Multimedia Project. Even if the High Republic never had a TV show that really coincided with the true story of the High Republic. Like the Acolyte is considered High Republic, but it's not really a part of this narrative. It's its own thing. And so really the only TV show you have within the actual narrative of the High Republic is Young Jedi Adventures. So right there, it is kind of difficult to compare Genndy Tartakovsky's Clone Wars with Young Jedi Adventures. But in terms of the way the stories were structured and all had kind of importance, I think it really is an amalgamation of Clone Wars Multimedia Project and New Jedi Order. But looking at all of those different things, Sanak, how would you kind of compare it to some of the initiatives we've seen in the past?
I think you said it best in the sense of like it's not truly comparable to one specific initiative because again, this is a very all-encompassing thing that the High Republic did. It didn't just go for full print. It went for full print with different reading levels. We haven't really seen that explored before. I still think as a whole, it is a bit better than what we got with the Clone Wars Multimedia Project. I think you look at books like Shatterpoint and you're like, wow, that's fantastic, right? But I think Clone Wars Multimedia Project is kind of carried by those comics. Unfortunately, a lot of those comics just don't sit well. They don't play well with everything that George Lucas and Dave Filoni started doing. You know, it's those books are like Cestus to Cestus I don't really care for or think too much about. I think the books as a whole handled better. The best of the best from the High Republic, I think, is still better than Clone Wars Multimedia Project. New Jedi Order still clears it for the High Republic right now. A lot more consistent all the way throughout. If I could sum it down cleanly, because it's combining both, that's where it edges out the New Jedi Order initiative and the Clone Wars Multimedia initiative, because I think it handled things all at once and not terrible in the execution.
The main thing the High Republic can take from these other multimedia projects is purely just pacing. The way the High Republic stretched out for the story it was trying to tell, I don't know if we needed 4 full years. And if we did do 4 full years, I don't know if we needed it to be spread out this thin and this far. So I think pacing is a big thing that they can learn in the future. If you're going to do a 4-year long initiative, maybe try to give like some big boost point in each year. And that's kind of, to me, the way that the New Jedi Order handled it. You have New Jedi Order had the big hardcover books that were the big turning points, and they were the jump points for the initiative. So every hardcover jumped a year in time. All the characters grew. You had the big plot points that kind of were affecting the paperbacks that were building off. With High Republic, even though this was an original stories, there were too many characters. And so by focusing things on big crux points, at least you can kind of sell that excitement to your audience again. I felt like they did that in phase 1, where like Light of the Jedi felt like this big epic point. Rising Storm with the Battle of Valo and the Valo Fair, that felt like this big must read point. And then Fallen Star felt like this big must read thing. But then after that, they kind of just let the narrative flow. And if you were into the High Republic, you were into it. And if you weren't into it, you weren't into it. And they didn't really actively try to get new people back on board. It felt like it just kind of was like, you're either in it or you're not. And so I think learning from the New Jedi Order in that perspective, maybe at least giving your readers, if you're going to stretch this across multiple years, at least giving your readers something to be excited about every year would be ideal. I mean, obviously, Clone Wars Multimedia Project had the backbone of TV. That's one that's a little bit unfair to compare it to in terms of the multimedia around there. But one thing I think they could take from there is just more important comic storytelling. Comics were so important in Clone Wars Multimedia Initiative. They always felt like a B thing here. And that's a little bit unfortunate because there are some of the best Clone Wars stories of all time in the comics rather than in the novels and legends. So I think they can get there. It just never felt like they were as interested in making the stories as epic in the comics. The comics were for the comic readers. They weren't for people who were trying to find High Republic stories at the scale that we were getting in the books. And so like I like that they, especially in phase 3, hyper focused on their comic characters, whereas in phase one, I thought one of the things that was the problem there was taking Avar and putting her in the story. In doing so, it felt like a lesser version of Avar, kind of a version of Avar that didn't feel really in line with the character at all from Light of the Jedi, took away focus from the characters they were building in the comics. I think there's just a lot of things that you can learn on the comic side. To be truly multimedia, you kind of have to go all in every aspect. Legends just did a far better job with hype for their initiatives, and I think that's another final thing they can learn, is just compelling people to dive in and really building that hype. Even with most of these initiatives, it wasn't like there was no Star Wars coming out at the time. Like, we had the prequels actively coming out. We had Clone Wars 2003 to 2005 coming out. We had Clone Wars 2008 coming out. Like, and we still had these epic initiatives in Legends that people were still hyped to read. You can do this even in the midst of a lot of Star Wars content existing. I just think by the end, they kind of lost steam. I think they lost readership with phase two, even though phase two was great. There were a lot of people who felt like, do I need to read this? And waited to hear if it was any good before they fully dived in. And then they started to hear it was good, and then they started to catch up, but then phase three was already starting, and it was just kind of, people are slowly catching up altogether. Storytelling wise, I think they really nailed it with the novels. I just think they can elevate it with the comics. Hello there, Star Wars Lads fans. Thank you so much for watching this video. This was actually a clip from one of our live streams and Q&As. So if you'd like to join us every single Tuesday around 7:30 p.m. Pacific time, make sure you join us. It'll allow you to ask a question that might be turned into a video. Hopefully you join us. Thank you so much for watching. Make sure you like the video, subscribe to the channel, and comment below all of your thoughts on this clip. Thanks for watching, and we will see you all next time.